because I wanted to be such an on-point healthy woman in September, the one who came out of summer needed to be intact. And it was going to be completely different from the woman who I would be if I had let it all unravel, which is what sometimes happens to us in the summer. And that realization changed everything about how I approached the rest of summer. Welcome back to the Inflammation Code podcast. It's me, your host, Dr. Shivani Gupta. So it's July, and I need to tell you something that most people won't admit out loud. This is the season when everything you've been building, everything you've worked for, is most at risk of quietly unraveling. Not because you stopped caring, not because you don't want it anymore, but because life gets louder in the summer. There's travel, celebrations, later nights, new environments. We have disrupted rhythms. All of it is beautiful. All of it asks something of your body that regular life doesn't. And I know this because it happened to me. Last summer, I was traveling constantly. I had the book tour. I had conferences. I had a big family vacation that I planned that did not go the way I expected and was actually super stressful and made my hair fall out. I had the kind of summer where you're saying yes to everything because it sounds cool and because it all matters and none of it can wait. But I had built before that a solid practice. I knew what my body needed. I had my supplements, I had my rituals, I had my morning routine. It was locked in. I was consistent. I felt strong during the school year. But then I went on the road. And the first week was fine. I brought my supplements, I did my warm water, I was really intentional. The second week, I was in a different city every few days. The hotels didn't have a tea kettle. The time zones were messing with my sleep. I was eating at different times because of flight schedules and event schedules and tours and everyone else's schedule except for mine. But by week 3, I realized something. I had done my supplements exactly twice. My tongue scraper was sitting in my suitcase unused. The warm lemon water had been replaced with whatever drink was available. I was running on adrenaline and good intentions, and my body was starting to tell me that it was not enough. I could feel it. The inflammation was creeping back in. My energy was flattening. My sleep was getting weird. That underlying sense of unease that comes when your body doesn't have rhythm anymore. And I remember thinking, I know better than this. I teach this. Why am I letting my practice fall apart just because of all this travel? And that's when something shifted for me. I realized it wasn't about knowing better. It was about understanding something deeper. It wasn't about perfection. It was about protection. And it was about recognizing that protecting my practice through the chaos wasn't an indulgence. It was actually an investment in my future self. Because I wanted to be such an on-point healthy woman in September, the one who came out of summer needed to be intact. And it was going to be completely different from the woman who I would be if I had let it all unravel, which is what sometimes happens to us in the summer. And that realization changed everything about how I approached the rest of summer. And here's what I want you to understand about summer from an Ayurvedic perspective. In Ayurveda, every season has a dominant dosha, or what I call elemental design. It's an energy that characterizes these qualities of that time. And so summer is actually Pitta season. Pitta is fire. So it's heat, it's intensity, it's transformation. And you feel this in your body, whether you know the framework or not. And this is where it got real for me during the summer because I was traveling so much. The way my digestion felt different on very hot days, even when I was eating the same things. The way my sleep became lighter as the nights got warmer. The way my emotions ran a little hotter, irritability creeping in faster than usual. That sense of being slightly overwhelmed that was hard to explain when nothing specific had really changed. But it wasn't just internal, it was showing up on my skin too. I noticed redness around my face, a slight rawness, the kind of inflammatory response that happens when Pitta heat accumulates and your skin can't regulate its temperature properly. I've seen this in so many clients. Skin flares, eczema, hives, things that were dormant are suddenly active again. Rashes that appear out of nowhere in the summer heat. And if you have kids, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Their skin flares in the summer heat too. They get heat rashes, eczema flare ups, these inflamed patches that show up as soon as the temperature starts to rise. And that's not random. That's Pitta accumulation in the system. And if you're a woman who's already navigating inflammatory sensitivity, perimenopause, or any kind of metabolic challenge, this seasonal fire doesn't just dissipate, it adds onto the load. So your baseline inflammatory response is already higher, and summer pours gasoline on it. But there's something else happening too. Travel, it's interesting. Travel activates Vata dosha, or the Vata elemental design. And Vata is the energy of movement and air. So it governs your nervous system, your digestion, your circadian rhythm. Every time you cross a time zone, or sleep in a new bed, or eat unfamiliar food, or disrupt the rhythm that your body has come to rely on, your Vata increases. And so increased Vata looks like digestive irregularity, immune vulnerability, anxiety, disrupted sleep, that sense of dryness internally and externally. So in summer, you're not just navigating your Pitta heat, you're navigating Pitta fire on top of Vata disruption. That's a significant load on your system. And honestly, in summer, I always feel it. So when I understood that, when I realized that my body wasn't weak or unmotivated, it was just trying to survive these two major energetic stressors simultaneously, I stopped judging myself and I started protecting myself instead. And that protection looked like one very clear thing. I am investing in my future self, not just fixing today. So, what does an Ayurvedically informed summer actually look like in practice? After that realization, I restructured how I approached the rest of summer around three priorities. The first is cooling. So, Pitta accumulates through heat. And the way to balance it isn't by fighting the heat, it's by creating internal coolness. So this means staying hydrated with room temperature or cold water, not ice cold, because ice actually extinguishes your digestive fire. It means herbal teas that have cooling properties, so mint, rose, coriander. It means foods that are naturally cooling, like coconut, cucumber, leafy greens, sweet fruit like melons and berries, any summer fruit that comes through like mango. And here's what specifically helped me when my skin was showing signs of Pitta imbalance. I cut back on the foods that heat you from the inside. So spicy foods, acidic foods, caffeine, alcohol, even tomatoes and citrus, which are inflammatory for Pitta types in the summer. And I focus on foods that actively cool me down. I always do coconut water in the summer, cooling oils like coconut oil instead of heating oils, cucumber salads, cooling grains like quinoa and basmati rice, herbs like cilantro and fennel that support cooling your digestion, but in a healthy way. And for my skin specifically, I added ghee, clarified butter. Ghee is so good for you. And I know that that sounds counterintuitive, but clarified ghee is cooling and deeply nourishing for inflamed skin. So I was more intentional about staying hydrated because dehydration makes Pitta flares worse. And I reduced anything inflammatory that was showing up on my skin. So this applies to your kids too. If they have skin flares in the summer, eczema, heat rashes, those inflamed patches, it's often a Pitta response to heat. So a cooling diet helps them too. Coconut oil on their skin helps them instead of those heavy creams. More cooling foods, less heat-inducing foods. It's not complicated, but it is a specific protocol. And here's what shifted for me. I realized that my anti-inflammatory support becomes even more critical in the summer, not less. Because the baseline inflammatory load is higher when you're hot, disrupted, and out of routine. So I made a commitment. My core anti-inflammatory supplements, the turmeric with black pepper, the herbs that support my digestion, those weren't optional anymore. They were protection. They were investment. I brought them in my carry-on. I didn't even leave them to chance in my checked-in bags because staying consistent on what keeps my inflammation down is how I protect my practice through the summer. And then the second priority is grounding. Vata, the travel and movement energy, is balanced by its opposite. It's balanced by stability, warmth, routine. And so when everything around you is changing, the ritual becomes the anchor for you. The warm water before your coffee, the supplements with breakfast. These aren't just health practices. In the summer, it's when you're in a hotel room or whether you're at someone else's house or you're in an airport lounge. These rituals are signals to your nervous system that even here, even in this new environment, there is a rhythm that you can trust because I'm staying consistent on my rhythm. And so I started doing what I call my minimum viable practice. It doesn't have to be your full morning ritual. It just has to be enough to tell your nervous system that the day has a structure. So I start with warm water, preferably with ginger or a squeeze of lemon if you can. I bring my supplements. I have a travel tea kettle I now travel with so I can have warm water and tea consistently on time. I take a few conscious breaths, and that's it. 90 seconds that keeps the foundation from crumbling. And then the third priority is protection. So when it comes to that, the summer is the season when your immune system is most challenged. There's heat, there's travel, there's foreign environments and different foods. And so proactively supporting your immune function matters more in the summer than in other seasons. And so this meant that I started my core anti-inflammatory support 5 to 7 days before any trip, not after. I was building the foundation before the stress of travel added to my load. And I packed everything I needed in my carry-on, not because I'm paranoid, but because the practice that keeps me well is too important to leave to chance. And so let me be really specific about what this actually looked like for me. In the morning, I woke up and no matter what time zone, I drank my warm lemon water. Not because I was perfect, but because 90 seconds of warm water before coffee is a signal to my body that I'm doing something to take care of it, that I am focused on digestion first. Then I took my core anti-inflammatory supports with breakfast, the turmeric with black pepper, those herbs that support digestion. These are the things that keep inflammation down. And it's not my full regimen, but it is the essentials. It's the non-negotiables. And then during the day, I focused on cooling foods when I could. I stayed hydrated. I moved my body. I made sure I got my steps in. I made sure I had salads that had cooling vegetables in there and would cool down my system. And then in the evening, I had 1 cup of calming herbal tea before bed. Even if the day ran long, even if it was a travel-packed day, I made sure I threw my teas into my bag so I could have 1 cup. And it would signal to my nervous system that the day was ending and it was safe to rest and to enter a beautiful night's sleep. And that was it. That's my minimum viable practice. I can keep it really simple if I'm on the road. Everything else, the dry brush, the tongue scraper, the longer meditations, the full morning ritual, those are beautiful additions when I have them. but they weren't keeping my practice intact through the summer. In the summer, things are busier. And so that minimum viable practice is kind of what I lean on. If I'm home and settled, then I can do the bigger self-care practices on the weekends. But what changed for me was this. I gave myself permission to stop believing that summer had to be the season where I always fall behind. It doesn't have to be. Summer can be the season that proves your practice is actually yours, that it travels with you, that it's portable, that you don't need a perfect environment to survive. You just need to understand what you're protecting and why. I want to tell you what happened when I came out of summer with this approach. I came out intact, not perfect, not untouched by the travel or the heat or the disruption, but at least intact. Because sometimes I go through seasons, like my holiday season, where all of a sudden I come out of it super inflamed, weight gain, and it's almost like I've gone 5 steps back in my blood work. And so I recognize now that summer is also a season to pay attention to because we lose our consistency with our health habits. So once I started practicing this, my inflammation stayed down because I protected my anti-inflammatory practice. My energy stayed stable because I grounded myself in these rituals. My nervous system stayed relatively calm because I didn't let the rich rhythms that I was doing completely disappear. And something else happened that surprised me. I proved something to myself. I proved that my practice doesn't depend on perfect conditions. I proved that I can be chaotic and still be consistent. I proved that protecting my health through the summer, staying consistent with the things that matter, the supplements that work, my rituals that anchor me, that's not something I do when I have time. That's something I do because I'm investing in the woman I'm going to be in August, September, and beyond. And that woman came out of summer different because I always go into summer. It's interesting. I always go into summer with one mood and I come out with a totally different one. That woman who comes out of summer became different from that one who went into summer. And it's not because the summer doesn't challenge us, it does, but it's because we protect what matters. And that's the thing. Sometimes summer can throw our whole life and schedule in the air, but how can we really guard it? Now, I want to give this to you because I feel like the summer is already pulling your practice apart. And I just want you to know that you're not alone. It happens to all of us. And you don't need to white knuckle through it. You don't need to give it up. You just need to understand what you're protecting and why. And so I've created an Ayurvedic travel wellness checklist that walks you through everything that I just shared. Everything that you need to pack, what to do before you leave, how to protect your practice on arrival, the daily rituals that keep you grounded through any disruption, and the minimum viable practice when you have no other options and you've got to keep it really simple. So it's free. The link is in the show notes. But here's what I want you to take with you from today. Summer doesn't have to be the season when you fall behind. It can be the season that proves that your practice, custom to you, is actually yours. Not because it's perfect, but because you're protecting it. And because you understand that staying consistent on the things that keep you well, your anti-inflammatory support, your rituals, your commitment to your own health, that's not indulgence. That's investment. That's you saying to your future self, I'm worth protecting. My health is worth protecting. I'm going to take the supplements that keep my inflammation down. I'm going to do the rituals that ground me into this earth. I'm going to protect my practice through the chaos because the woman I'm going to be this fall, going into the fall holiday season, Q3, Q4, she deserves that protection. And that's not perfection. That's wisdom. That's learning as we evolve and keeping that wisdom in place and learning our lessons. So I wish for you to have the most beautiful, grounded, energized summer. I'll see you next week for the next episode of the Inflammation Code podcast. To learn more about the podcast and me, you can visit drshivani.com. That's DrShivani, or you can catch me on Instagram at dr.shivani.gupta, where I love to DM with you guys and engage and share. So stay well, everyone, and I'll see you for the next episode of the podcast.